Good morning, Caitlin. This is Tom Youngman. Just checking if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Caitlin, I show it's 9:30. Are you ready to begin the meeting? Hello, Caitlin, are you there?
I apologize. I got a call from our general manager I had to answer really quickly, but we can go ahead and get started if you're ready, Chair.
Okay, yes, let's convene the meeting and move to agenda item 1, which is the roll call. Caitlin, will you take the roll?
Absolutely. First off, I'm just going to go through our normal little lesson here. I'm going to ask that all users mute themselves throughout this meeting, even if you're on a phone call. It just kind of helps with background noise as we are presenting. You can turn your webcam on or off if you wish. Sometimes it's easier for folks' internet if your webcam is off. If you'd like to make a comment or sign in, please do so in the chat. There is a link that you can click where you can indicate whether or not you would like to make a verbal or written comment. I'm going to go ahead and pass over the roll call to our new coordinator here at the River Authority, Kendall Hayes. She will be helping me out with the Region L process, so please be nice to her. Kendall, please go ahead.
Appreciate that, Caitlin. All right, we can go ahead and start with roll call. Mr. Tim Andrus.
I'm present.
Thank you. John Byram. Kurt Campbell. I think he just came in. Kurt Campbell, is that you?
I'm here.
All right. Pat Calhoun. Ray Chavez.
Present.
Thank you. Alan Cockerell. Will Conley. Charlie Flatten.
Present.
Thank you. Vic Hildebrand. Kevin Janik. Tom Jungman.
Present.
Thank you. Russell Labus.
Here.
Thank you. Glenn Lord.
Present.
Thank you. Dan Meyer.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Middleton. Jonathan Stinson for Kevin Pattison.
Present.
Thank you. Ileana Pena. Robert Puente.
This is Darren Thompson for Robert Puente, and he'll be joining us shortly.
Thank you. Humberto Ramos.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Ramsey. Weldon Riggs. Roland Ruiz.
Here.
Thank you. Diane Savage.
Here.
Thank you. Suzanne Scott. Greg Singleman.
Here.
Thank you. Mitchell Sowards.
I am here, and my alternate, Andrew Young, is here also because I'll have to step out briefly at a certain point during the meeting today.
Okay, thank you. Heather Sumter.
Here.
Thank you. Lori Moyer for Thomas Taggart. Steve Graham.
Present.
Thank you. Ian Taylor.
I'm here.
Thank you. Diane Wasenich. Adam Yablonsky.
I'm here.
Thank you. Elizabeth McCoy.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ronald Fiesler. Ileana Delgado. Don McGee. Marty Kelly. Joseph McDaniel. Jamie McCool. Carl Krull. Rusty Ray. Okay, thank you. Caitlin, I can turn it back over to you.
All right.
Ma'am, this is Herm. I want to let you know I'm here. I was here. Sorry.
Thank you, John. And everyone, if we were not able to call you, or if you did not answer in time, please go ahead and sign in on the roll call sheet that's located in the chat box, and we will review that afterwards to make sure we have accounted everyone.
Kendall, this is Gary Middleton. I'm present.
Thank you.
Kendall and Caitlin, does it look as though we have a quorum present, members?
I believe so.
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good. With that, we'll move to agenda item 2, public comment. Is there anyone present that would like to make public comment, or have we received any? I believe there's an opportunity to sign up for making public comment through your survey. Have we received any?
We have not received any requests so far.
Okay, and we have an item at the end of the agenda item 17 for public comment. So anyone who wishes to make public comment and we've missed at this point, you can do so at the end of the meeting, of course. With that, we'll move to agenda item 3, approval of the minutes from the February 4, 2021 meeting of the planning group. I believe the minutes are in your packet and were sent out prior to the meeting. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? There being no discussion, is there a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
Glenn Lord, so moved.
Or second?
We have a motion and a second. We won't take a roll, any sort of vote. If there's anyone opposed to adopting those minutes or to the motion, please speak up now. Otherwise, we'll consider it approved by consensus. Okay, very fine. We'll move to agenda item 4, which is a status report of the Edwards Aquifer Habitat Conservation Plan. We have a presentation plan for that agenda item. Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief in my comments. The one item that the HCP has recently dealt with is along the San Marcos River. We went into condition M, which condition M is basically where the flows drop below 120 CFS. And that is something that we have to notify the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about. It's a certain condition under our permit that we're required to let them know, as well as it begins to restrict the type of downstream work in the river as far as working with SAV and other types of work that's required as part of our program. We'll have to restrict that. Although it dropped to 98 CFS, and about 2 weeks ago, with the recent rains, we are seeing it rise, and so we anticipate that it will probably go above 120 CFS shortly. But until we have that and have it for a reasonable period of time, we won't be lifting condition M. Let folks know, because that does affect flows in the stream as well as downstream. Anyway, that was all I had to share.
Very good. Thanks, Scott. We appreciate that update. Is there any under this agenda item? Okay, there being none, we'll move to agenda item 5. Status of the Guadalupe San Antonio Mission and Aransas Rivers and Mission Copano Aransas San Antonio Basin and Bay Stakeholder Committee, BBASC, and BBEST report. Is there anyone prepared to make a report for that committee?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. This is Brian Mast for the San Antonio River Authority. I can provide a brief update on the BBASC and BBEST. Back on April 1st, the Water Development Board distributed the draft statewide synthesis of environmental flow studies for public comment, and that was distributed by ourselves to the BBASC and BBEST members to see if anybody would want to provide comments on that draft report. Sam Vall has, as you probably all recall, has been the Best co-chairman for the Guadalupe and San Antonio River Basin Best. And he was, we're very thankful for his continued leadership in that role. And he agreed to accumulate any comments from the groups. He did receive comments from Nathan Pence at GBRA, and then compiled those with his own comments and submitted them on May 3rd, which was the deadline for public comment. Those are now with the Water Development Board. I can say, without going into detail of the comments from the GSA BASC and BBEST, that there were 10 pages full of comments that were submitted on our behalf. And now the Water Development Board is reviewing those. The schedule for the draft report, the draft statewide synthesis of environmental flow studies was slightly delayed. And so we're about 3 months behind schedule. Our next step is to get with the Water Development Board to find out when they will have compiled all the final comments and get the final report distributed, and have that study team available to present to the BBASC. Probably likely this summer is looking like the most opportune time. So that's the latest movement on the environmental flows process. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions or attempt to answer any questions the group may have.
Very fine, thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Mast? Okay, if there are none, hopefully we'll receive an update when that report is final, and to the extent appropriate, discuss it and consider the final report. With that, we'll move to agenda item 6, Texas Water Development Board communications. We have, I think, a couple of presentations we're going to receive. Ms. McCoy, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Caitlin, do you have my slides?
I will pull them up. Just 1 second, please.
Okay, thank you.
Kim, this is Diane Wasenick. And while we're waiting, I just wanted to tell you that I'm here. I'm a little late because I did not get the link for the meeting, so I was scrambling to get that. So we're on, and I'm glad y'all covered the BBASC. I got to hear that. Thank you.
Very good. We'll record that you're present, Diane.
All right, here it is.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, everyone. This is Elizabeth McCoy with the Texas Water Development Board. I'll start with an update on the current regional water planning rulemaking. As a reminder, this is for amendments to 31 Texas Administrative Code 355 and 357.21. The proposed changes would allow for limited reimbursement of certain labor costs for the planning group political subdivisions, and it would also provide a streamlining of the notice and public participation requirements. The 30-day public comment period on the proposed changes closed at the end of March, and the final rules are actually going to be considered by the TWDB board this morning. So we'll follow up with more information once the board considers those final rules today. We've received the applications for the 6 cycle planning grant funds and anticipate board authorization to negotiate contracts in June. And the deadline to execute the initial contracts between TWDB and the political subdivisions is August the 31st. We are currently accepting public comments on the draft 2022 state water plan. The public comment period closes on May the 26th. A public hearing on the draft state water plan is going to be held at 1 p.m. on May the 24th. And this hearing is going to be held both in person at the Stephen F. Austin building in Austin, Texas, and virtually via GoToWebinar. The draft 2022 State Water Plan document, as well as information on how to submit public comments and how to participate in the public hearing, are available online at the link that's provided on the slide. And there's also kind of a link to these documents under the Hot Topic section of the TWDB website. Next slide, please. TWDB's Surface Water Division has contracted with Aqua Strategies to conduct a study to quantify uncertainty in reservoir firm yields. This project is going to evaluate the impact of significant drought events on reservoir yields to try to determine how the existing firm yields kind of hold up under drought events that are more extensive or more severe than the current drought record that's used in water planning. The study focus area will be the Upper Colorado, the Brazos, and the Trinity River basins. A draft report is due by the end of July, and the final report is due by the end of August. And we'll be sharing the results with the planning groups for your consideration for the 2026 regional water plans, but it won't be required for you to necessarily use this in plan development. If you have any questions on the study or would like additional information, please reach out to Naloon Fernando with the TWDB, who's managing that project. And then finally, we have started a new webpage for the 6th planning cycle, and I'd like to just briefly share that with you. A link to the 6th cycle landing page is provided on this slide, but I'll go ahead and kind of show you what that page looks like on the next slide, please. Okay, so this is the main 6th cycle landing page. You can see that there are several bulleted items that link to other pages. The first bullet is the 2026 Regional Water Plan documents, and that will take you to a page where we'll be posting documents for the development of the 2026 Regional Water Plans, and I'll show you that page in just a moment. The second bullet is the Chair's Conference Call documents. That's where you can find the agendas and meeting reports from the meetings, or the conference calls that we hold with the planning group chairs. And then under the third bullet, you'll find copies of the regional water planning newsletters that we send out quarterly. But if you were to click on that first link to the 2026 Regional Water Plan documents, it will take you to the webpage that we have on the next slide, please. All right, so at the top of this page, you'll see TWDB Communications for Plan Development. This is where we're going to post any emails that we send out during the planning cycle. So you can refer to this site to see what information and guidance has been sent. And we're going to organize those emails by task. In the project documents section, we'll be posting relevant documents, also grouped by task. Right now, there's not a lot of information posted since we haven't gotten too far into the 6th cycle, but this will be updated with information throughout the cycle. There is a section for contract documents. We are in the process of updating the contract materials, but they'll be posted here once they're available. And then below that, at the very bottom, there is a section for administrative documents. This is where you can find things like the best practices guide for the political subdivisions and the regional water planning rules pamphlet. So that's a quick overview of the 6th planning cycle webpage. We're going to be posting a lot of documents and resources for you on this page throughout the cycle, so please keep this resource in mind. And that's all that I have to update you on today. We do have Daniel Colazo with the TWDB's Innovative Water Technologies Group. He's here also today to provide you with some information on the statewide aquifer storage and recovery and aquifer recharge suitability study. But before I pass it over to Daniel, are there any questions for me?
Yes, Elizabeth, I have a question. I have a recollection from our chair meeting that TWDB was going to develop guidance regarding the role of the liaisons. Is that underway, and when would the liaisons expect to receive that?
You know what, that's a good question, and I'm sorry I don't know the latest on that. I can check and follow up with you.
Okay, very fine. Are there any other questions or comments that the members like to make? If not, we'll move to the next presentation by Mr. Collazo. Mr. Collazo, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, sir. Let me start sharing my screen here. Okay. Okay, so I'm Daniel Collazo. I'm a hydrologist with the Texas Water Development Board. And I want to thank you for allowing me to present on the statewide survey of aquifer suitability for aquifer storage and aquifer storage and recovery projects or aquifer recharge projects. Let me get this. So first off, I'd like to provide some brief definitions of ASR and AR. Aquifer storage and recovery, or ASR, is a technique that uses a well to inject water into an aquifer for later recovery. ASR is used to store water when there's surplus supply in order to be recovered later during times of need. Aquifer recharge, also known as AR or MAR, is recharging an aquifer at the surface using various methods such as infiltration basins. AR is often used for diverse goals such as reducing a declining water table, improving water quality, or mitigating subsidence. In 2019, the Texas legislature passed House Bill 721, which directed the TWDB to conduct studies of ASR projects and AR projects. The Texas Water Development Board contracted with HDR to complete the statewide survey, which is published in December of 2020. The survey identified areas of Texas with three components important to a successful ASR or AR project, which are hydrogeological parameters, excess water sources, and water supply needs. The three screenings resulted in scores which are combined to result in a final suitability rating for ASR or AR across Texas. Although not mandated by the legislature, the TWDB identified the spatial nature of the statewide survey and produced this interactive public data display. On the left is the survey's Esri story map, which has several tabs, each which contains more information on the screenings, survey conclusions, links to the reports, and an interactive web map with over 100 layers of data. This interactive map is under the Explore the Data tab. In the following slides, I'll be using screenshots from this interactive map to show results of the survey for Region L. This is the interactive web map application. The application includes several functions that most users of map applications will be familiar with, such as buttons for navigating around the map, bookmarks, a measuring tool, and a search bar. Here we can see that I've zoomed into Region L. Clicking on a map feature, as shown in the screenshot, results in a pop-up with additional data. And on the right is the layer list, which allows you to toggle data layers on and off. The first screening of the survey is the hydrogeological screen, which assesses the major and minor aquifers for characteristics related to recoverability, recharge, and storage. Here we can see that the aquifers in Region L include the Gulf Coast, Diego-Jackson, Sparta, Queen City, Carrizo-Wilcox, Edwards, and Trinity aquifers. The results of the hydrogeological screening for ASR and AR are shown here. On the left is the hydrogeological score for ASR, where the range of blue colors represents the score. The darker blue is the high category, which covers much of the region and includes the Gulf Coast, Carrizo-Wilcox, and Trinity aquifers. The gray grid cells in the north and western parts of the region are where no major or minor aquifer is present. On the right, we have the AR hydro score map, which has the scores represented by green. A major difference here from the ASR screening is that the white cells are where the aquifer is too deep for AR implementation. The next part of the survey is excess water screening. This screening included surface water, reclaimed water, and groundwater. All of these intermediate layers can be found in the layer list. The map here shows the final normalized score for this screening. The higher scoring cells, which are the darker green, are mainly around the I-35 corridor and Victoria. The final screening is the water supply needs. These results are based on scoring the manufacturing, water user group-based municipal, and steam electric needs from the draft 2022 State Water Planning Database as of March 2020. Here, the high-scoring cells around the I-35 corridor, the city of Victoria, and a few municipalities in the western part of the region. And now we get to the results of combining the three screenings. Here we see the final suitability for ASR. The final rating score is represented by the blue colors. The tan grid cells are where there was no major or minor aquifer, and the gray areas are where there was no need identified. The highest scoring areas are the I-35 corridor and around the city of Victoria. Here we can see the final rating, but for AR. As with the hydrogeological screening, we see that there are areas where the local aquifer is too deep for AR. Here they're shown in brown. This project and its story map provide access to a free and public data source that is versatile and that dovetails with the water planning process. The survey is very large scale and does not replace the need for site-specific studies. However, it's a great tool to explore the data. In addition to the final suitability scores, the results of the individual screenings or even their component layers could be looked at separately to meet the user's needs or interests. Hopefully this tool will start conversations and help give an idea of areas that may be good for ASR or AR. Thank you for your time. This has been a brief overview of this project. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or are interested in a more detailed presentation.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Calzado. Are there any comments or questions from the members? I've looked at the website. Incidentally, it's impressive, and so good work to TWDB. Any comments or questions regarding that? Well, we'll leave it at that. Okay, if there are none, we'll move forward in the agenda. If need be, we'll bring up this topic at a later time, but we'll move on to the chair's report, agenda item 7. I don't have much to report. Want to inform the group that on April 7th, we received notice from Alan Cockrell that he was resigning from the planning group. Mr. Cockrell has retired and wants to enjoy his retirement and thought it'd be best for someone who is actively engaged in water management to participate in the planning group for his interest area. Alan was kind enough to be considerate of our internal process that we have to go through to fill positions, but after discussion, he felt it was appropriate to resign at this time. We thank Alan for his service to the group. He was an engaged member, and I certainly appreciated working with him over the years. Let's see, in addition to that, I think most of the items I was going to discuss were touched under TWDB communications. That's all I have to report to the group at this time. Are there any questions or comments regarding the chair's report? Okay, there being none, we'll move to agenda item 8, discussion and appropriate action regarding potential amendment to the Regional Bylaws, Article 5, Section 4. Caitlin, were you going to make a presentation on this matter?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, as some of y'all may know, I'm going to pull this up right here. In our current bylaws, we ask that whenever we go out for public notice to request nominations for any sort of membership position, we need to post this notice in a newspaper of general circulation in each county located in our Region L. This usually means that we end up spending about $6,000 or more to post these notices in newspapers. And to be very frank with everyone here, I don't think that I've ever received a response from a newspaper. We typically try to get better responses from word of mouth, or also from just posting in county clerk's office. I'm going to recommend that we make this change to the bylaws to save the Region L some funds in this administrative process, and also increase our outreach to the counties. Are there any comments or questions about this?
Caitlin, this is Tim. When we discussed this, I recall, or at least having the thought that, from time to time we get resignations. They're not scheduled. There's not certain times that they can occur.
Correct.
But each and every time, regardless of the number, we incur as a planning group this fee in excess of $6,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And with the proposed change to the bylaws, we would no longer make any notification of vacancies in newspapers, but rely on websites, county clerk's offices, and word of mouth of planning groups and those that participate in the process. Is that also correct?
That is correct, and we have found that that is the way that we receive most of our nominations from.
Okay. Is there any, well, one final question. Is this agenda item sufficient for the planning group to take, sufficiently worded for the planning group to take action on this proposed revision you've drafted?
That is correct. Someone may make a motion, pass with the action.
Before we go to a motion, is there any discussion on the matter? Okay. There's no discussion. Is there a motion to revise the bylaws of Region L as drafted and presented by Caitlin?
Chairman Andrews, this is John Barham. I so move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second. Ray Chavez from Salmon.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to amend the bylaws as drafted. Is there anyone opposed to that amendment? If so, speak up. With no opposition, we'll consider the motion passed by consensus. Thank you, Caitlin. I think it's a good change, save us some money. But with that, I will, point out we have vacancies, and we discussed a new one and so on. Need to encourage the membership to, if you can identify individuals that would be willing to participate and can fill those vacancies, please encourage them to submit a nomination or have a nomination submitted for them. Okay, with that, we'll move to.
I'm sorry, Chair, if I could add real quick to this. So we've had a little bit of confusion for returning members. So we've decided to extend the application deadline to July 23rd. So if you are interested in reapplying, renominating, you have time to do so. Please just send me that nomination form, which can be found on the Region L website through email. And again, that's July 23rd that we will need that information by. I also just want to read out a list of the categories that we will be accepting nominations for. That is counties, industries, environmental, electric generating utilities, water districts, water utilities, river authorities, municipalities, and agricultural. Know folks who are interested, as Chair Tim said, please share that information. Thank you.
Caitlin, I believe this is part of the discussion we were going to have under agenda item 9, so we'll consider ourselves having moved to that agenda item. I have the latest email I could find on this was from April 22nd. I know things have changed since then. The number of categories from which we're needing nominations has apparently grown. Can you send out another message to the group?
Absolutely.
With that complete list? Okay. Thank you. That'd be good. And well, may have been shorter to identify the list of interest areas we don't need have vacancies in, but it's extensive. So hopefully, you know, the members will be able to find people that are willing to work on this activity.
Can't put in that list. I don't think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. When she does that email to us, would she include those? How many, what categories and how many nominations for those positions have currently been submitted, so we kind of know how many people we're looking for in those categories, et cetera?
Absolutely.
I think that's a good idea. Have we received any nominations thus far?
Yes, I can read out the names of folks who have submitted nomination forms thus far. For returning members, we have Adam Yablonsky, Charlie Flatten, Gary Middleton, Robert Puente, Russell Lavis, Tom Taggart, and Weldon Riggs. For new members, I have Jonathan Stinson and Vanessa Pugh-Williams.
Okay. Well, good. We certainly appreciate all the existing members re-upping, so to speak. Thank you for doing that. And so the close date for that is, say it again, July 23rd at 5 p.m. to receive nominations. And our goal would be to try to fill those vacancies at our next quarterly meeting.
That is correct.
All right.
Tim, this is Diane Wasenick. I have a question. I'm wondering, out of all of these categories, since it's pretty much every category we've got, is it going to be clear to us which ones already, which ones have which categories are there people not re-upping for? I heard the short list there of Adam, Charlie Flatten, Robert Puente, Tom Taggart, and I couldn't write them all down real quick, but I guess if we look at the chart that says when people's terms are up, we might be able to put together such a list. But usually when we're there in person, we're talking to each other and we're finding out who's seated and who's got a position coming open, and it just makes it kind of hard to figure out. So I hate to add more work for Caitlin, but if there are people leaving besides Alan Cockrell who do not intend to re-up, that would be good to know.
I agree, and perhaps I misunderstood Gary's request, but I thought Caitlin would be doing essentially that, identifying the number of vacancies and the number of nominations received for each vacancy. So we would, but perhaps you're asking for individual names or something like that. But
well, I guess what would substitute for us all being able to get together in person is people letting Caitlin know if they're not going to run again, if there's going to be an open seat. We haven't called for people to do that, have we?
so I think we've asked the membership at the last meeting to notify us if they intended to resign when we were discussing posting the notice. It's fine to remind folks of that if you. It's a much more convenient process now without the newspaper notice. But if you know you're going to resign or not continue to fill your role after your expiration or the term, the end of your term, yeah, please let us know.
Okay, that's good
and
enough.
if need be, resign so we can expand the nomination group. But yeah, Caitlin, without making it, a major project, if you could send out a new message identifying the interest areas from which we're looking to receive nominations, those interest areas that you've thus far received nominations for, and between those, I think we'd be able to identify which areas may not have any representation and which areas are still in need of some representation. When I say
Absolutely.
areas, interest areas.
Absolutely. I would also like to caution folks when I send out this list that just because I show that I have nominations does not mean that you can't share this nomination form with folks who are interested in this position. You know, we want this to be as open a process to the public as possible. So I will share that nomination form again, and please share that far and wide with whoever you would like to.
Very good, thank you. Any additional discussion on that matter? Okay, there being none, we'll move to agenda item 10, solicitation for technical consultant update by the political subdivision San Antonio River Authority. Caitlin, were you going to make some comments under this agenda item?
I am. So if anyone has questions or gets confused by what I'm saying, please feel free to stop me at any time. But I just want to give a little background context. For the last cycle, we held these procurement processes through an entire open meeting format. So everybody was allowed to view, the public was allowed to come and view, and all of the consultants were allowed to come view the scoring, all of those conversations, and all of the interviews. After speaking with a few consulting firms, we have found that they are not interested in doing that because it's a little uncomfortable to hear your rival's private presentation information, but also to give yours as well. And just to have it in such a public format is not the typical way that the River Authority does it or that other consulting firms are used to doing this. So in the past, we've not had a lot of applicants because they are so uncomfortable with this process. This cycle, we are planning on doing something a little different to follow the River Authority's procurement methods and to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the formatting. What we're planning on doing is taking 2 to 3 members from the planning group and 2 members from the River Authority to make a little committee outside of Region L. This would allow every single meeting that they have to fall outside of the Open Meetings Act. So it would all be private. So the scoring, the presentations, the interviews would all be private just for this committee. Then this committee would make a final recommendation to bring back to the planning group. What we need to discuss today is if this is acceptable to the planning group. As you'll see in the next agenda item, we will need to select those 2 to 3 members to join this committee. Do I have any questions so far? Okay, I do want to say that for those who do join, it is quite a few meetings that you will have to attend, around 4 or 5 meetings that we will need to put on y'all's calendars. So even if we were doing it in this open meetings method, the entire planning group would then have to come to these 4 or 5 meetings. And I think that would be really difficult with all of our members to get on their calendars. So please keep that in mind. Do I have any questions?
Caitlin, these meetings would be remote or in person?
They would be remote.
Thank you.
Caitlin, confirm for me that this small group of proposal reviewers, they would make a recommendation to the planning group collectively.
Correct.
Correct. And by following this procedure, San Antonio River Authority would feel more comfortable with how the procurement process is being carried out under its agency.
Correct. I will say not only the River Authority, but also all of the consulting firms.
Yeah, I understand that, but and appreciate that. But in particular, San Antonio River Authority has been kind enough to serve as our political subdivision, and I'm just trying to point out, by following this recommendation, I think it, at least in my opinion, is appropriate to try to adhere to your internal processes, given your willingness to serve in this role, and would hate to do anything to damage that relationship with San Antonio River Authority. Final additional question: the proposals, whatever they may be from responding consultants, you would anticipate that at least part or perhaps all of their proposal would not be available to the public until, well, would not be available to the public or the planning group at least before the decision is made?
That is correct. So all members who join this committee will need to sign an NDA to make sure that they are keeping this information confidential.
A non-disclosure agreement.
Correct.
And following the decision, is it Sarah's procedure to keep those proposals confidential and beyond the decision?
Correct.
And I know I've seen a draft NDA. This is a process that you folks have followed for the flood planning group, correct?
That is correct.
And is that process underway, and is it working as planned?
Yes, we've gotten a lot of applicants, so that was really exciting. And we had, I think, like 30 different firms attending. That sounds like a lot, but quite a bit of firms attending our pre-submittal meeting. And then it's just been moving a lot faster. So this all happened because we started doing it the open meeting method with the regional flood planning group, and we found it extremely hindering to have to do it with the Open Meetings Act notifications, and then also getting on everybody's schedule, because like I said, it's going to be 4 or 5 meetings. So with this new method, it's just been bam, 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 much faster.
Very good. Are there any other questions or discussion by the members of the planning group?
Yeah, Caitlin, quickly, these are personal NDAs, right?
That is correct.
Correct.
Tim, this is Darren. I do have a question for Caitlin.
Yes.
Caitlin, so this process, this group of 5 individuals is not selecting the consultant that will be working for the regional planning group. They're just scoring the RFQs or RFQs.
That is correct. So they will be scoring, and then if they feel that necessary to do so, interviewing these firms, and then they will take this final recommendation, and it can be top 3, top 2, top 1 that they can bring to the planning group and give them that information, and then the planning group will formally make the decision together.
And now it doesn't restrict the planning group from requesting either the recommended firm or the top 3 or whatever present to the planning group, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions regarding the proposed procedure for selecting a technical consultant?
Well, again, this is not the proposed procedure for selecting the consultant. It's just for grading the responses. Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Good point. Yes, correct. I've been misspeaking, but it's a part of the selection process that will generate presumably a recommendation regarding a preferred respondent, and recommendation regarding additional consideration at the planning group, by the planning group.
Mr. Chairman, my only concern is it is a small group representing a very large group. I get that it's hard to get that many people together, but maybe adding a couple of people to the committee might help. If someone was absent or someone couldn't make a particular meeting, you'd have at least a few more people at the selection.
The issue with that is that if someone is absent, if they miss a meeting, then they will not be allowed to proceed, because it would not be fair if they did not have all the information and then made a judgment. So by committing to this committee, you are committing to attending every single meeting.
I think that's even more reason maybe to have a couple more people on the committee, maybe a committee of 7.
Okay. Caitlin, do you think expanding the size of this working group would be an issue for the River Authority?
My procurement staff may be a little upset with me. Again, I do hear what you're saying and making sure that we have like those alternates as backups. However, I feel like that would lend itself towards kind of disarray. Again, it's really hard to get on 5 people's schedule, alone 7, for all these meetings and in the time frame that we're looking at. I think that 5 is more reasonable than 7, but if this is the direction that the planning group would like to go in, then we can absolutely do that.
Well, I think Mr. Byram's comments are relevant, and I can see his point. Seems to me, though, we're not really discussing alternates. If you don't participate in if you miss the first or the last presentation or any in between, you won't be part of the grading process and developing the recommendations, what you're saying. Yeah. And I can certainly appreciate the scheduling issue. Well, is there any other discussion?
Is the number of committee members dictated a little bit by Open Meetings Act, Caitlin, or
Yes,
just logistics?
by Opens Meeting Act as well. So, for example, we would only be able to have 2 members from the executive committee attending. If it was more than 2, then it would constitute an Open Meetings Act of the executive committee.
Okay, thank you. So that is a factor to consider as we go forward.
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll resolve this under the next agenda item, the number, I suppose. Is there any additional comments or questions regarding the proposed procedure aside from the number within this work group?
I would like to say, this is Diane Wasenick, that I've always wondered why we had so few people applying, and so this may be a good thing.
I agree. I'd rather have a problem with too many consultants to sort through than not enough. Okay. If there's no additional discussion, just for the purposes of controlling the meeting, we'll move to agenda item 11, which is the discussion and appropriate action regarding the selection of participants for the technical consultant procurement work group. Before we worry about the grand total number, do we even have, are there 3 members that are interested in serving on this work group and making the necessary commitments, to complete the process?
This is Mr. Ramos representing Water Districts. I'd be interested.
Okay, Mr. Ramos.
Also serve an executive committee, so there's one from the executive.
This may be a little self-serving, but is there anyone else from the executive committee that would like to participate? Any other members interested?
Just quickly, so Caitlin, what's the timeline that you need to have this? So let's speculate, 5 meetings in how many weeks?
This procurement we were planning to have go out in June, and then we will need to have this done by August, by our next August meeting. So it'll be in the month of June that all of this happens. These meetings will be from 45 to an hour max each.
So with that additional information, any other members willing to participate?
This is Charlie Flatten. I'll participate.
Ms. Flatten?
Mr. Chairman, I could serve if needed.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
John Byram, I'm sorry. I would be willing to serve too.
Thank you, Mr. Byron.
And Tim, this is Darren. I agree with John. I think we should have a couple more individuals from the group that sit on those panels.
Okay.
Elizabeth
Are you
McCoy,
offering?
if you're on here, can you let us know how many folks would be allowed to serve before it constitutes an open meeting act? I don't want to get anyone else too excited about joining before we have that information.
I think we previously established that more than 3 members of the executive committee would constitute a meeting that fell under the Open Meetings Act. Wouldn't it also be the case if a quorum of the planning group, regardless of membership in the executive committee or not, that would certainly carry you over the threshold for an open meeting?
Absolutely. Let me look it up because Elizabeth, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I am here. I do not know that information.
I think that 3 is the limit from what I'm seeing.
I'm sorry, you're saying beyond 3 members of the planning group would cause these meetings to fall under the Open Meeting Act?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, the primary purpose of taking this approach, I think, is to avoid the Open Meetings Act and the problems that creates for consultants. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So if that's the case, while I understand and respect the comments regarding the number of members participating in this work group, given that explanation, is there not consensus, I suppose, is the best way to put it, to move forward with 3 members? Their recommendation will still come back to the planning group, and depending on how they carry out their recommendation, the planning group will have the opportunity to consider their recommendation and presumably, ask questions and make comments regarding respondents that are recommended. So it's not as though the membership won't have the opportunity to give it full consideration. Now, they may not have all the same materials that's used for the scoring, but it won't be a decision that is effectively made by there being a simple recommendation and only one choice to make. At least that's not the intent. So with that said, is there any objection to proceeding with a work group comprised of 3 members from Region L?
Tim, if I'm just going to make a comment, as Glenn, I've seen this process work in the Region 8 flood planning group, and it's pretty effective and covers everything that's needed. So I'm very supportive of this idea.
Okay, thank you. Okay, without any additional comments then or objection to proceeding this way, I think we'll just comprise this work group of 3 members. Those members being Mr. Ramos, Mr. Flatten, and Mr. Byram. They'll serve on that committee. Caitlin, I guess you'll coordinate with those members, get them the necessary documents to execute, and take them through the process.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we'll consider that work group established. Caitlin, do we need to do that by motion, or would you prefer it by motion for any reason?
I would prefer it by a motion, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to establish that work group with those members?
Glenn Lord, so moved.
Gary Middleton, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there opposition to that motion? There being no opposition, we'll consider the motion passed by consensus. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your comments. Sorry we couldn't accommodate the larger group, but I think it'll still be an effective process. And we look forward to.
The only thing I wanted to bring up, Tim, is this is in June that these meetings are going to occur. And if something should happen before then, and one of these three people cannot make all the meetings, we might ought to have a fallback of some kind. And I'm wondering if that might be that you, as the chair, would be the fallback.
If the group finds that acceptable, if the timing is such that I can participate in all of the meetings, and one of the members, knows that they won't be able to complete the process, then I'm happy to serve in that role. Is there any objection to that change to the intended method of carrying out this process?
Well, as she said on the open meetings, it could only be 2 members from the executive committee, so you could only replace the gentleman who is on the executive committee in that realm or that possibility. The other members from the general membership would have to be replaced by someone else.
Well, I think the committee couldn't be comprised of more than 2 members of the executive committee without triggering the.
Okay.
So I would, for example, if Mr. Flatten for some reason couldn't participate, I could be his alternate, and we'd still not exceed the open meeting requirements.
Correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Middleton, you still see an issue with that?
Well, I'm also wondering if Mr. Byram represents the Nueces River Authority, is he serving in a dual capacity then? Or is he representing the River Authority? Or is he representing Region L?
Well, no, in this work group, he'd be representing Region L as a planning member of Region L.
Okay.
Maybe
that's fine.
I fear I'm misunderstanding your question, but I don't think there's any issue with any of those members representing multiple entities or agencies.
Well, I just claimed that the nomination committee would be made up of River Authority members and 3 from the planning group.
Oh, I follow what you're saying. But by River Authority staff, I think we're talking about San Antonio River Authority staff.
Okay. That answers my question then.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, good point. Okay, so is there any objection to me filling this alternate role for the work group?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is a second?
Second. Glenn Miller.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition to the motion? There being none, we'll consider the motion passed by consensus. Thank you, everyone.
And just to
There's
let folks, sorry, Chair, just to let folks know, the 2 River Authority staff from the San Antonio River Authority who will also be on this evaluation committee will be Melissa Bryant and Aaron Cavazos. And Melissa, I believe that you're on the call if you'd like to say anything right now.
Hello, Melissa. And before you make comments, and I hope you do, do you presently serve as an alternate for any planning group member? I can't hear you. No, I'm sorry.
I still can't hear you, unfortunately, Melissa. I think it may be a connection to GoToMeeting issue. But Tim, please go ahead with what your comment was going to be.
Well, it's not so much a comment, but a question. If Ms. Bryant serves as an alternate for one of our planning group members.
I believe that she serves as the alternate for Steve Graham, the
Is that right?
Antonio River Authority representative.
You're an Aggie. That's good. Does the membership or San Antonio River Authority think that presents any issue that she serves as an alternate from time to time? It still wouldn't take us beyond the threshold for open meetings requirements that I know of. Any comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Mast with the River Authority. We can confer with our in-house counsel to see if they have an issue with that.
Okay.
If they do, we will appoint someone in Melissa's stead.
Okay. I think that's a workable solution. I don't see that it presents an issue, but if the River Authority comes to that conclusion, we'll trust you to take the appropriate action.
Thank you.
Very fine. Any other discussion under that agenda item? Caitlin?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope that this will be a speedy process and we'll be able to get lots of applicants.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item 12, discussion appropriate action regarding pre-planning public meeting. Caitlin, were you going to carry this item?
Yes, I can do so. So we are required by the Texas Administrative Code and the Texas Water Development Board to have a pre-planning meeting before we get started with the technical consultant process, before we get started with actual work in the planning group. So my recommendation is that for the next meeting, the August meeting, we also have this pre-planning meeting during that. It will be a presentation by the Texas Water Development Board, and we will make sure to spread the notification for this meeting far and wide throughout all of the counties that fall within our jurisdiction. So we can get a lot of folks to come forward and give their opinion or suggestion or comment on what they would like to see in this cycle's planning. Do we have any questions for that? Just to be very clear, this will happen during our August meeting. It'll just be a presentation and folks will have just an opportunity to comment before the plan process gets really off and going.
Okay. That's how we've handled it in the past, correct?
Before we've had 2 to 3 meetings that were in person, but from my conversation with other folks, they're usually very poorly attended.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it would be appropriate to handle it as you're suggesting. Is there any objection to proceeding in that way from the membership? If there is none, let's plan to proceed in that way, and presume that would be relatively high on the agenda list, so it's one of the first things we take care of. Okay. Is there any additional discussion or comments under that agenda? Okay, if there not, we'll move to agenda item 13, discussion and appropriate action regarding regional liaison nominations for Region N. So this is the, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the one liaison position that we still have vacant. We filled 3 or 4 other ones at the last meeting. Is that correct, Caitlin?
Yes. So we spoke with John Byram outside of this, who has been serving informally as our liaison for Region N. If he would like to do so, we can just formally nominate him and then move on with this process. We just need to formally have him as our liaison.
For Region N.
For Region N, correct.
Okay. Well, one, thank you, Mr. Byron, for filling that role for us informally. Without you objecting, I assume you're willing to fill that role. If that's the case, is there motion to designate Mr. Byram to that position?
This is
So
Adam.
moved.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a motion?
This is Darren. I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
This is Adam. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, we'll consider the motion passed by consensus. Any additional discussion on that agenda item? If not, we'll move to agenda item 14, regional liaison updates. Do any of the liaisons have updates to provide? I'll provide, regarding Region P, the next meeting of that planning group is to be determined. So when they schedule that meeting, I'll attend it and participate and so on and report back at the following meeting of the planning group. Any of the other liaisons care to make a comment?
Region K, Diane Wasenick. I have talked with both Charlie Flatten and Vanessa Puig-Williams since they also follow Region K. So we're kind of waiting until their next meeting to see if Charlie will continue to be the alternate for that position that he is the alternate for in Region K. And if so, he and I may both follow Region K. That way, if I'm happening to be gone in July, there's somebody else covering it. And I think their next meeting is in July.
Okay, very good. Incidentally, for those who serve as liaisons, there's a TWDB has a website for regional planning group meetings that you can look up scheduled meetings if you think for some reason you're not receiving notice or have missed it. So encourage you to look into that if you need to. Any additional comments?
Yeah, this is Adam. Region J has a meeting a week from today. Their agenda looks similar to ours as far as picking their, consultants and stuff.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll look forward to a report at our next meeting. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if there's not, we'll move to agenda item 15, status of Region 12, San Antonio Regional Flood Planning Group, and Region 11, Guadalupe Flood Planning Group. Is there a status report on that?
Sure, I'll just give a quick update. So as I've said previously, Region 12 is currently in the process of choosing our technical consultant as well. We are following this procedure that we have agreed to do in Region L, and we have just conducted our interviews and will be recommending the top choice to the committee in 2 weeks. Other than that, we've just been getting some helpful presentations on flood data, on capital improvement projects that the county, city, and region has done on flood mitigation and things of the like. Lauren, if you would like to give Region 11.
Hi, yes, good morning. My name is Lauren Willis, and I am the administrator for Region 11 for the Guadalupe River. In April, we did choose our technical consultant, Freeze and Nichols. So we are working on that contract right now with them. And we are planning to go to in-person meetings beginning in August. So that's something that we are looking forward to. Right now, we do meet the first Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m. So our next meeting will be on June 2nd. And for now, that meeting is going to be in person or virtual. And then just to remind everyone, our website is up and running, and that website is guadaluperfpg.org. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Are there any comments and questions regarding those reports? Okay, there being none, I appreciate those reports. We'll move on to agenda item 16, potential agenda items for the next meeting. Caitlin, you want to review that?
Absolutely. So at the next meeting, which is going to be on August 5th, 9:30, we will have our pre-planning meeting presentation. We will have the technical consultant recommendation by the evaluation committee, and we will be nominating those representative vacancies. So please remember July 23rd, I will send out an email again with all that information. But if there's anything else, a presentation or other items that the planning group would like to see on that agenda, please let me know.
Do you anticipate that meeting will be virtual as well?
That depends on what our housing opportunities are for the meeting. If we would like to meet in person, I do believe that we have some options.
Okay.
It's up to the planning group and your comfortability.
Sure. Well, if there's any strong opinions one way or the other with the planning group, whether you prefer or the virtual meeting or prefer in-person meetings, let us know. I guess direct that information to Caitlin if you would, and we'll give that some consideration. I guess at this moment we'll leave that to be determined, so to speak, and consider what feedback we get and whether or not these virtual meetings remain authorized moving forward.
It also depends on the Governor's Emergency Act, which has allowed this to occur. So if he takes that back, then we will absolutely meet in August in person.
Exactly, right. Okay, is there any additional discussion or comments regarding potential agenda items for the August 5th meeting? If there is not, we'll move to agenda item 17, public comment. Is there any public comment to be made at this point, or have we received any?
We have not received any public
the chat. I'm sorry?
We have not received any public comments request.
Very good. Okay. If there's no public comment, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time, and you'll be receiving correspondence from Caitlin regarding various matters. So look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.